Hello, and welcome to Our Special Lives. I'm Laura McGrath, and today we are talking with professor and coach Kari Ann Atkinson. Kari Ann is going to lead us through a 4-part series on how to deal with feelings of overwhelm, despair, and grief. And you want to stick around till the end because Kari Ann has a very special offer for this audience. Before we get started, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share. Hi, Kari Ann. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Laura. Thanks for having me.
So you and I had talked, I had told you that I post these videos on a number of parent groups, and I was just seeing so many posts right now with expressing feelings of loneliness, overwhelm, and despair. And so I came to you and said, hey, is there anything that you can think of that we can do to help people? And you came up with the great idea of doing a 4-part series. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to pluck one of those common themes that I'm seeing over and over again, and we're going to talk about it. And hopefully we can help people through this series kind of manage some of these feelings. So the one we're going to talk today is a theme that I was seeing repeated over and over, which is generally, I'm so down, lonely, and overwhelmed. How do I manage these feelings?
So first, I want to start with, it is so wonderful that people are recognizing that they have the ability to manage their feelings and their emotions. It's also important to recognize that having these types of feelings is totally normal. It's 100% part of the human experience, regardless of if you have a child with special needs or not. Most of the people around you are experiencing the very same things. So this is absolutely just normal. However, feelings of like loneliness, being down, despair, things like that, overwhelm, are what we call debilitative emotions. And so what that means is a debilitative emotion like prevents you from moving forward, prevents you from taking actions. And it obviously can have a kind of a net negative impact on your life, which is why it's really important to recognize when you're feeling like this. So the first thing, there's actually a lot of things here, and I'm going to try and break it down as simple as possible for you. So the first thing is to understand that our circumstances, whatever it happens to be, is not what causes those feelings. And that's really hard for people to wrap their minds around, that it's really your thoughts that you're having that are causing your feelings or your emotions. And this is fantastic. And the reason why it's fantastic is because it means that you have control over how you think and over how you feel. Now, one of the things that we tend to do is we do this like kind of compare and despair type of a thing, where we look at other people's circumstances, other people's lives, and we compare our life to their life. And that's one of the reasons why we start having thoughts that might cause us to feel in despair or feel lonely or feel down. So one of the first things that I recommend that people do is to write down all of the feelings that you're having. Just take a few minutes every day and write them down on a piece of paper. Don't just have them in your head. You need to get them down so you can actually read them. And you want to separate them because every feeling that you have is caused by a different thought. And this is super, super important so that you can address all the different feelings. We tend to group them all or lump them all into the same category, and they're not. They're different feelings. This is significant because you want to start processing each of the different feelings on their own. That way you can work through it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So far, are you with me? Okay.
Yes.
So you want to write down all the feelings that you're having, because each of them stands on their own. Then you want to look at each feeling and write down the thoughts that you're having that are causing each of those feelings. So for example, I really used to struggle with loneliness. I used to think thoughts like, nobody understands, none of my friends have to go through this. I wish I had their problems, not my problem, right? I almost wish that I had other people's problems because their problems seemed so much easier than mine. Right, which was having to deal with my daughter with intellectual disabilities and some other physical things. And so it's really important to recognize that you have to address the thoughts that are causing the feelings. Once you do that, once you get all done on paper, you ask yourself, how true is this thought? So what I realized was I wasn't alone. There were so many people going through the same thing I was going through. Just like the people that watch you, there are so many people that view your YouTube episodes. You're not alone. There is actually a community of people. So you really need to kind of address, how true are these thoughts? And are these thoughts actually serving you? After you get things down on paper, you want to kind of recognize, where are these thoughts coming from? Are they coming from comparing to other people's lives? Are they coming from expectations? So one of the biggest things that I see, not just with my friends, but with clients, is that they expected their life to be different, right? They expected a different outcome for their life. And expectations can also start to weigh us down. And that's a whole nother episode of how to deal with expectations. But I think just kind of recognizing the source is really helpful in processing through the emotion. So you want to make sure that you get really clear on what thoughts you're having, because what happens is our brains look for all of the negative things. And so once you start having a thought of, nobody understands, I'm alone, my life is over, my life will never be the same again, which these are all common normal thoughts that cause those feelings, your brain is going to look for evidence of that. Yep, today is like yesterday, it's not going to change. And you start looking for all of the evidence for all the negative thoughts that you're having, right? So that's like one of the biggest steps. After you get all of this stuff down on paper, then you ask yourself, how do I want to feel? And that's a really important question, because there are some days that you want to feel upset, overwhelmed, lonely, and that's okay. But most of the time we need some relief from that. So how do I want to feel? My personal feeling that I used to wanted to feel was strength. I just want to feel like I'm strong enough to get through this. I wanted to feel like I wasn't alone. So once you identify how you want to feel today or tomorrow or in the next week, then you need to come up with thoughts that are going to help you feel like that. Things like, this sucks, but it's going to be okay. My personal one was, this sucks, but it's going to be over soon. I never knew what soon meant, but I know there was going to be a time when it wasn't that bad, right? And it ebbs and flows. And like we all know, life goes up and down, and our kids go up and down. So if you can even have a difficult thought like, this is hard, but you followed up with something positive, but I can get through it, or I can do hard things, or this isn't forever. Or just come up with other types of positive thoughts that work for you. And I always recommend you trying on the thoughts to see which ones are going to produce the feelings that you want to have. Now, overwhelm is an interesting one, because when you haven't processed through thoughts and feelings of despair, being down, being lonely, that can actually pile up and lead to overwhelm. So I like to think of overwhelm kind of in two different categories. There's emotionally overwhelmed, and there's task-oriented overwhelm. Okay, so when you have unprocessed feelings, it's going to contribute to everything else feeling bigger than it actually is, right? And then you have task overwhelm, which are all the different things that need to be done. And so if you're just going to look at this from, say, a task perspective, you sit down and you write down, again on a piece of paper, what actually needs to be done versus what you would like to get done. And you need to prioritize the needs first, because we tend to put things on our list that don't actually need to be done. They can wait, or they're not as important. When you get overwhelmed with all of the things on your list to do, the medications and the doctor's appointments, the meetings, maybe you have more than one child and you have all of their stuff too. We tend to get that, I have to do this. But the truth of the matter is, you don't have to. You can choose not to do it. But most of us don't think like that. We think, well, I'm the mom, or I'm the dad, I have to do this. I'm the caretaker, I have to do this. Well, we still have a choice, right? And so if you can change the way you're thinking about it, I get to do this. I worked with a woman who had 3 children, and 2 of them were born with terminal illnesses, and one of them passed away when he was about 6 years old. Her youngest child had the same disease, same prognosis. this time around, when she was doing medicine, she wouldn't think, I have to do this. Her thought was, my child is alive. I get to do this.
Yeah.
And just listening to her, it didn't make it less hard at all, right? She's still going through all the different, the sadness and the depression and the loneliness and all of that, but it gave her a different feeling to her day. I get to do this, because she doesn't get to do it for her other son. So trying to find things that are deliberately trying to find things that are positive, even when it doesn't seem like there's always at least one positive thing.
Yeah,
Always.
I mean, I've been in situations that have been really bad. And one of the things that helps me is to say it could be worse. And that's similar to the example that you just gave, sometimes my son has just needed so much, or maybe he's going through a period of time when he's sick and it just seems very overwhelming. But what I can say is, at least he's not in the hospital. At least we're able to manage this at home. At least he's not on a ventilator. I mean, there's like there's all kinds of things that could be worse. And, at least we have a roof over our head and we have food to eat. And, sometimes I go there because I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel, but sometimes you have to do that just to have the thought that it could be worse.
Exactly. Just to get you through. And I think that's really important. And I commend you, because so many people get wrapped up in wanting to change the circumstance. We want it to be different. Of course, we want our child to be typical. We want our child to be out of pain. We want our child to not be going through these things, but we don't have control over that. And I think one of the things that as parents we get wrapped up in is wishing and wanting so bad for things to be different, that's what we focus on, wishing they were different, instead of, this is what it is and this is how I'm going to get through it. Right. And that's a whole nother episode of how to do that. But because, they're all very intricate, but just recognizing this is the situation and how am I going to do whatever I need to do to get through this is what will help you get through it. Ultimately, you have a choice in how you get through the day. You can choose to get through the day pushing yourself in a positive direction, or focusing on the negative. And our brains always go to the negative. Like the negative sticks like a Velcro, right?
Yes.
But the one positive thing that happens slips, like it happens and it goes away and then we forget about it, but we don't forget about the negative stuff. So we want to start remembering the positive things. So do you have any questions?
I just had one question. Sometimes I think when people are kind of starting to look at problems this way, there can be confusion about what's an actual circumstance and what is a thought about that circumstance. Sometimes it seems like the thoughts that we have are actually very real and those are the circumstances. It might be a situation where, the circumstance is actually my son is really sick. And what I'm thinking about it is, my son gets sick way too much. He's suffering. This is terrible, and I might think that that's actually the circumstance, that he gets sick way too much and that it's terrible. But that's actually just my thought about it. The thought is, the circumstance is that right now in this period of time, my son is sick. And really what happened in the past doesn't matter. What happens in the future doesn't matter. That's the circumstance that's now. And then I develop a thought about it.
Exactly. And so the circumstance is the fact of what's going on, and it's just the fact. And if you want to get really specific, you can even say, my son is sick with, and then give all of the symptoms or give the diagnosis. That gets you really, really clear on what actually the fact is. And then you look at the thought that you're having about that. Right. And so you're exactly right that what happens is we have a thought and we believe our thoughts. And so we make that thought the fact, but the thought isn't the fact.
Yeah. And we start interjecting little sneaky words like terrible or very bad or awful or those kinds of things. And while it may be a very challenging situation, when you start interjecting those adjectives into the circumstance, it puts a really negative spin on what's happening.
Exactly.
And then it can make it more difficult to see how you could kind of have a more positive mindset about what's going on.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And, and people will say, but it is very bad. Yes. And to you, it's very bad. That's a thought. But to somebody else that I've just talked to, your situation, she would love your situation because her situation is XYZ,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's so subjective. And so, and which leads me to another point, and we talked about the compare and despair a little bit, is that we tend to like judge other people's circumstances. We judge what other people are going through, that theirs is harder or theirs is not as hard as ours. And so when we start comparing and judging others to ourselves, that will also add to kind of the negative thought patterns that we have. All right. Do you have more questions?
No, I think that was it for
Okay.
now. Yeah.
So I have a couple of things. Obviously, support groups are a fantastic way for people to manage, to kind of like start not feeling not as lonely. Also, self-care, especially all parents, but especially parents of special needs kids. We need to take care of ourselves because we're the primary caregivers of our children. And if we are not whole, then how are we supposed to keep giving out pieces of ourselves and make it, something that can really benefit your child? Like if you get so depleted, that's going to result in depletion in your caregiving. And so really need to make sure that you have some type of self-care, whether you take a 20-minute walk or a 30-minute walk every day, you sit down and read a book. I love learning. And so I would sit down for 25 minutes a day and I'd pick a subject and just start learning about it. And that also gave me things to think about when I was doing mundane tasks like separating the medicine into the thing, into the little box. Be deliberate about finding something positive, make a list, start writing down a list and just make it a continual list every day, 1, 2, or 3 things that you found positive about that day. And put it somewhere where you can see it to remind yourself of the positive things. The
I
last
just
one.
want to interject. I did that. I mean, you and I have worked on that and I did
Yeah.
that. And that was really, really helpful. So just, maybe at the end of your day, if you look back over your day, you have to find 3 things that were good.
Yes.
And it really, really does help you because then the next day you're looking for those good things. And it
Right.
really does kind of turn around your view.
Yes, it absolutely does. And are you still doing it or we did that and then now it's just kind of.
Well, I did it in another context, but I can
Yeah.
just, affirm for the audience that it is a
Yes.
technique that works really well.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. And the last one would be to talk to somebody. I mean, of course, we talk to our friends, we talk to our family, but that's a different thing. I would really recommend talking to a life coach, talking to a therapist, talking to a mentor, people that have an outside perspective that aren't in your situation with you.
Yeah.
Because when someone's outside of it, they can see objectively.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they can see things.
With friends and family, they love you and they want to validate your feelings.
Yes.
And so you're going to express all of these thoughts and they are going to agree with you. And what happens, it's very well-meaning and well-intentioned, but it just keeps you stuck in those same thoughts.
Right. It reinforces the suffering.
Yeah. It does, and they don't mean to, but that's what happens a lot of times. And so talking to an objective person is definitely very helpful in actually moving forward.
Exactly. Yes.
So Kari, if people want to find out more about you or connect with you, how can they do that?
Super easy. You can follow me on Facebook, Kari Life Coaching, on Instagram, which is Kari, Kari, and then a period, Life Coaching. Or you can email me, Kari Ann, Kariann, at KariLifeCoaching.com.
And I'll link to all this below.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
I also wanted to let you know that anybody that's watching these episodes, if you email me and you're interested, I would be more than happy to give you a free coaching session. It's amazing. A coaching session is about 50 minutes long, and it's amazing what just one session can do, where we just talk about your situation and what's going on with you. And so I'd be more than happy to offer a free session for your viewers. All you have to do is email me, Kari Ann at karilifecoaching.com, and let me know that you watched the episode, and we can go from there.
That is so fantastic, and I just encourage everybody to take you up on it because I've had such an incredible experience with you, and I think other people would too. So, thank you again
Yes.
so much for joining us today, and we'll be talking again soon.
Sounds wonderful. Bye.